Hi, Tricia here at Club Scrap with another great page kit from Club Scrap, Ivy League. This is a beautiful collection. I've printed out my instructions, I've got my accordion pocket file, and if you're new here, be sure you get information from us if you need it on how to make your own accordion pocket file to help us stay organized while we make our pages. Also in the kit, we've got some beautiful ribbons, some gorgeous wax seals. Here we have our pre-cut photo mats. We have two really beautiful fleur-de-lis brass charms. I'm thinking I want to get another set of these and make some earrings out of them. And speaking of earrings, I think these would make some gorgeous earrings as well. Look at these miniature tassels. We were a little surprised by how tiny they were when they arrived, but equally as impressed by how sweet they are too. So I think you'll really like adding those to your layouts. And then we have our cut aparts and prints. So let's begin by doing some filing. Let's start with our photo mats. And to find out where they get filed, I just look at the layout. It's usually one of the first ingredients listed. So for layouts 1 and 2, we're going to find 2 burgundy photo mats and just put those in our pocket for layouts 1 and 2. We also need, let's see, 3 green photo mats in pages 3 and 4. And then we'll move on to the other pages. We need a burgundy photo mat in layout 5 and 6, 3 white photo mats in layouts 5 and 6, and the remaining 3 tan photo mats in 7 and 8. And you're going to love this tan paper. It has the most gorgeous texture. Next, let's organize our papers in the order in which we'll be using them. So I like to begin by looking at page 2 of my instructions, and I just go through the first 4 pieces of paper that I see. So to sort that, we'll need 1 sheet of green plain. I'm just going to make a pile. And then another sheet of a math print. So you recognize it by all the math equations that are on there. And then next we'll be trimming a library print. That's pretty identifiable. Next, a burgundy plain. Let's find just 1 of those. And then we'll trim our cut aparts. So I'd like to start out with my border strips first. I think those are the easiest. They don't require any rotations. And then we'll trim our other cut apart sheets. Finally, I like to put things in order from bottom to top. So I start out with the base for layout 8, and that happens to be the library print. And then the base for layout 7 is the green plain. The base for layouts 5 and 6 are going to be the blue plains, both of them. The base for layouts 3 and 4 is the tan, both tan plains. Then a math print, and then the burgundy plain. That should be all of the papers that came in your collection. And now they're in the order. I flipped them back over so the green's on top of my pile. And that'll be the first thing we trim. Got my Fiskars guillotine trimmer here. And just always make sure that you're pressing on the clear bar when you make those slices. So this has a nice easy cut here. The first one's at 11. And then 10. And 6, and we'll let the papers just pile up. Rotate this piece so it's horizontal. This is the 6 by 12, and we will cut at 11 1/4, 7 1/2, and 3 3/4. When I did those cuts, I just made 3 pieces all the same size, and they'll go on layouts 1 and 2. So I'll pocket this in 1 and 2, and this, my friends, is the only scrap you will have at the end of all of this process. So set that aside. Now we have another strip here. This is 4 by 12. We'll cut it horizontally at 9, 6, and 3. These get filed in different spots, even though they're all the same size. The first one goes in 1 and 2. 2 of them go in 5 and 6. And the last one, pocket 7 and 8. That leaves us with 2 narrow strips that both go in pocket 1 and 2. And if you've made the accordion pocket file, according to my instructions, the file is exactly the same width as this piece. So just place the pieces in the pocket at an angle so that you don't wreck the papers, and that'll work just fine. Moving on to the math print. Now, the orientation of this print is important, so make sure when you put it in the trimmer that it's turned so that the top is on your left. It's basically in the trimmer sideways. And we'll have 2 simple cuts, the first at 9 and then 5. The 5-inch piece in the base of your trimmer is filed in pocket 3 and 4. And then this 4x12, which was just in the middle here, this middle slice, we'll trim it horizontally at 6. And both of these pieces will go in pocket 5 and 6. And this last longer narrow piece goes in 3 and 4. And we'll move on to the library print. Again, 2 really, really simple cuts here. I like this, nice and easy. The first cut's at 8 inches and the piece is in the trimmer right side up. So we're just to the right of the ladder. And then slide it down to 5. Place this 5-inch piece in pocket 7 and 8. And then the other 2 remaining pieces, 5 and 6. And grab the final burgundy piece before we get to our cut aparts. We're going to make 2 really, really narrow strips here, so don't panic. We're just going to go ahead and cut them at 11 3/4. Gives us a really thin little piece that I like to call a paper ribbon. We need another one of those, so we'll cut at 11 1/2. And then 10, 8 3/4, 8 3/4, okay. 7 1/2, and 4. So we have a little bit more cutting going on here with this burgundy piece, but that's okay. Now rotate this 4x12 so it's horizontal, and we'll cut at 9 and 6. Now we do some filing. All the 3 pieces you just made, the 4x6 and the 2 3x4s, go ahead and put those in pocket 3 and 4. And as you're filing, it does not matter what order things are within the pocket, as long as they're in the right pocket. This 3 1/2 by 12 will trim at 10 1/2, 7, and 3 1/2. Now you just made 3 squares, hopefully, if everything went according to plan. They all go in pockets 7 and 8. And then there's a narrow little piece. We are actually going to trim and use this. It's 1 1/2 by 3 1/2 right now. We'll trim it horizontally at 1 3/4. And when I do that, I like to bring this down to the measuring rule at the middle of the trimmer base, so I can see that the top edge of this paper is aligned with that line, and this is aligned here. Everything's nice and square, plus I can see a lot better, and I can hold it in place on the clear bar. I just made 2 small rectangles, and we'll use both of these in layouts 5 and 6. Now I have a bunch of border strips. I have them piling up in order here, so leave them in the order they're in. And the one on the top, it goes in 7 and 8. That's a 1 1/4 inch strip. The next 2 pieces, one's a little bit wider than the other. That's okay. They both go into pocket 5 and 6. And then we have 2 really narrow strips. These will go in 3 and 4. Next up, we'll move on to the cut aparts, and if you want to know the roadmap of where these pieces are distributed, just go ahead and turn to the first page in your instructions and you'll see an exact image of what you're looking at in real life on your instructions. So when you trim these apart, make sure you follow along with the really pale registration marks on the edges at the top and bottom. Just line that up with the blade and let all the pieces pile up. We do try to have you trimming on whole numbers. So for example, the first cut would actually be at 11. And then 10. But just go on down the line and visualize the edge of those registration marks aligned with the blade. All right, this large piece right here is used on layouts 1 and 2. The next piece that's a little bit wider, it's got this fleur-de-lis on it, 3 and 4. The next piece that says A Happy Childhood, 5 and 6. And there are 2 strips with fleur-de-lis that match. They're pretty much the same type of art style. Both of them go in 1 and 2. The library books, 7 and 8. And this last Stop Thinking, Start Dreaming strip goes in 5 and 6. Finally, our final piece. I like to trim these so that the narrowest parts are falling off the end first, so we'll just put it right side up where it says put the alphabet in math on the upper right corner here. Once again, I'll line up those registration marks and just let everything pile up as I work my way across. All right, this larger piece with the journaling prompt, 3 and 4. This with the fleur-de-lis goes also in 3 and 4. And You Are the Finest Person, 5 and 6. And let's separate this piece. The More You Read, 7 and 8. I thought as an adult I wouldn't need to sing the alphabet song to alphabetize, but yet here we are. Boy, isn't that true? 1 and 2. And this fleur-de-lis goes in, it's not really a fleur-de-lis, whatever it is, 3 and 4. All right, we'll separate our next strip, and I'll take the best day. That goes off the end first. All right, this somewhat bland journaling prompt that we'll decorate later, 1 and 2. And then we have That's What I Do, 7 and 8. Memories, 5 and 6. And that tiny little piece, The Best Day, 3 and 4. Final piece, we'll trim that apart. Okay, alphabet and math, 3 and 4. Don't Quit Your Daydream, love that. That goes in 7 and 8. The symbol here goes in 5 and 6. And Beautiful Moment, 1 and 2. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes all of the trimming needed for all 8 pages. So I'll set my trimmer aside. And before you move your trimmer, always be sure to support that accordion pocket file, because you don't want everything falling out of it and landing on the floor on the other side of the table, because that would be sad. I'm going to start what's called the dry fit assembly phase of the operation, and that just simply means we're not using adhesive at this point. I'll give you some tips about finishing the assembly, and then you can do the adhering and adding photos and journaling on your own. So let's begin with the base for layout 8, and that will be this beautiful library print. And then I will also remove the contents from the pocket for 7 and 8. Make sure you get everything out of there so you don't misplace anything or wonder what's going on. And we'll begin with a vertical photo mat here, kind of in the center, upper center. And then we have a green piece that should nest well with this journaling prompt. Finally, on the right edge, we have 3 equally spaced 3.5 inch squares. And how do you do that equal spacing? Well, you want to use our grid ruler. So when I am positioning these 3 items with adhesive, I just make sure that my grid ruler is centered on the right edge. So I've got a 6, and a 0. And once I am level with the edge and I have equal measurement at top and bottom, then I can figure that out on these edges as well and just equally space the elements. And that way they're level, they're vertical, and they're aligned and equally spaced, and your pages will just look that much more professional. Before you set this page aside, I'll show you the finished version. And all I did to embellish this was added a little bit of this beautiful 2-sided taupe-colored ribbon and just tied a bow. A very, very simple layout. For layout 7, we'll use the green plain, and this is a text weight, but we are going to be supporting it quite a bit with this larger 5 by 12 piece from the library print. So that will begin our layout. Then in the upper right corner, we'll add 2 horizontal tan photo mats and a burgundy strip nested with the library border strip. And then we'll take this Don't Quit Your Daydream cut apart and plant it right there. And then here we'll add this, and then above and below it we can add one of those cool wax seal stickers. Now let me open this box. You're gonna die when you see what's all in here. This is so cool. Tons and tons of wax seal stickers. So I just found the ones that I thought with the color was like the best match for the collection, and you can put one above and one below. And they are self-adhesive, but you just have to look a little bit to separate the backing from the seal itself. Okay, so we'll set this aside, and then we'll dry fit our next page. Before we do that, I'll show you, this is what the finished layout looked like. Oh yes, and this is gonna be a spot where you can go ahead and add one of those sweet little tassels right there. I just used some bookbinding glue to attach it, but you could use a brad or whatever else you'd like to add as well. I've taken everything out of the pocket for layout 5 and 6, and I also have my first piece of navy paper here in front of me. Now, one of the things that I started with on the right side, that would be layout number 6, is I took my stencil and I placed it in the lower left corner, of this piece. And with I used some white pigment ink and an ink applicator, and all I did was just press real gently. I'm right on the very edge. In fact, I'm not even using the whole entire shape, just so that it fits well into my plan for the layout. And I'm just dabbing this ink into the openings of the stencil to add a little bit of a decorative element on the lower left corner. And I did that 3 times to get this layout started. So now that I have my little border running across here, I can sort of get things going with the rest of the print. I'll have a vertical piece with the library ladder on that, and then intersecting, I'll be looking for the border that says "Stop Thinking, Start Dreaming," and its corresponding burgundy matte. In this case, it's the narrower of the 2 that I have to choose from. Then we'll move on to a vertical white photo matte and a nested journaling prompt. So we have the green, 2 green pieces here, and then this journaling prompt should nest. It's not going to be exactly perfect, but it's really, really close for a good nest. And in the lower right corner, you can find these really pretty seals. And I just chose 2 of them, 2 different styles in that bronzy sort of a tone. And I finished the layout there as well as with some ribbon. Let's take a look at the finished one. There are the wax seal stickers. They look just so real and dimensional, I love. And then the finished border across the bottom edge there and the ribbon. All right, so for the other layout, 5, we're continuing on with the other portion of this library print. And then maybe if we just begin in the lower right corner. And of course, I never really adhere anything until I'm finished doing this dry fit process, so that I know all the pieces are right where I need them to be. Across the top then, we'll have the other nested border strip. We'll have this quote flanked by this little art element and then 2 sweet little photo mats. And then we'll also just take one of these sweet blue tassels. Oh my goodness, that's just darling. Along with one more little wax seal, and you can tuck that in. And that's another reason why I like to wait to adhere everything, because you need to glue things down in the order that's appropriate from bottom to top, you know, so all your layers work out well. That was 5 and 6. Now let's take a look at the next layout, and that base is going to be a tan, a really beautiful texture, and I'll get everything out of the pocket for 3 and 4. All right, for this one, we're going to begin with this larger piece of the math print. And I wanted to separate this color from this color because it's just a little bit close. So that's why I'm using this ribbon. And I'm going to show you how I adhere this, because when you're dealing with those narrow little strips of ribbon, it can be kind of a challenge. So I always begin with this known area here where I just line this up right with all the edges here of my base page. Then I take the Club Scrap needle tip applicator with some bookbinding glue and just kind of squiggle it along the seam just above this base paper here. And then I'll pick up the strip and just place it right, resting it right against the edge of the seam. That way I know it's level, and because I'm using a wet adhesive, it gives me a little bit more time to fine tune that before, like if I was just using a dry adhesive, it's one and done. You have no choices for a repositioning, but the wet adhesive allows that a little bit. Then we'll add some vertical green mats and just tuck that right under there. And maybe we'll just slide in a cute little wax seal behind that. Down in the bottom of this layout, we're going to be taking one of our 4x6 mats that we trimmed and the square fleur-de-lis piece. You can put a photo on here, but you know, if you don't have enough photos, it's nice to have artwork on things so that you don't have a big blank spot on your page. And then we have the Best Day. Now in your kit, you have this beautiful velvet ribbon, and I just took a parallelogram shaped swatch of this ribbon. I just folded it in half, and then I use mini staplers. With a mini stapler, just staple that in the upper right corner, and that will give me some nice balance to this half of the page. Okay, for the other half, this would be layout 3. We'll bring in our other tan piece. And a lot of the assembly is the same, except for it's happening along the top edge. So there's my, I think it's a 3 by 12. And we'll separate this area with our paper ribbon, our burgundy ribbon. I'm going to go ahead and attach this. You may be wondering what I did on the left side of this layout if you're already looking at the picture. And basically I used an ink applicator, and you can either use ash or earth ink. I grabbed my ash pad, but what happened was I grabbed a ink applicator that had earth ink on it, so I got some sort of a combination of the two. And then you'll load it with some ink, and I'll place my stencil so that the corner of this side is sort of, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch in from the edge of the paper. And what's important to remember when you're doing this type of application is that you do not need a ton of ink. You just need, just enough. And you can always add more. It's just more difficult to take it away. If this is your first time stenciling, I might suggest just practicing on a piece of scrap paper. I always have plenty of that laying around. Just until you get the hang of it, get a nice little touch going. And it's a lovely little decorative element there. Then take the other half of the stencil. You'll notice it goes a little lower and a little longer. So just reposition that. Make sure you stabilize. And if you're not comfortable with holding the stencil in place while you work, and of course that comes just with a lot of practice, why don't you grab some painter's tape, or otherwise take some masking tape and put it on something linty to remove some of its tackiness, and use that to hold down the stencil while you work. To finish things up, we'll put a green photo mat below our burgundy strip and then flank that with 2 vertical smaller photos. Then we have this big border strip, and then we have our silly quote, and you can tuck another one of those silver toned seals behind it if you like. And I also added a fleur-de-lis charm right to the top of this. Now there are a couple of ways you can do that. I smothered some bookbinding glue on the back of the charm, placed it on top of the wax seal, and really let it sit for a while. This charm has so much dimension on both sides, so it makes adhering it just a little bit more of a challenge. If you want something more sturdy, go ahead and sew it on or use a brad to attach that on the hanging loop here on the charm. Now for this side, I figured out where I wanted to place this element, and then I took a pencil and marked the edge of the element on each spot, removed it, and then used a craft knife to cut between my pencil guidelines. And I'll show you the finished page so you can take a look at how that worked out. Here it is. So I've got this piece inserted in here, and I went back and erased my pencil marks after I made my slots and sliding that piece through. So that's kind of tucked behind my stenciled object. Oh, and I also added this beautiful strip of velvet ribbon to the layout. When I added it, I cut it a little bit longer than the 12 inches, but because this ribbon is so heavy, I just simply took a craft knife and a ruler and cut the ribbon with a knife. You can also do that with the scissors, but I did not wrap the ribbon ends around the back of the layout like I normally do on this particular one. Okay, now we move on to our final 2 pairs of pages. The base for layout 2 is the math print. And I'll take everything out of the pocket. As far as assembly goes, I think this set is so nice and easy. So if you're new to this, it's a wonderful place for you to start. Get your assembly line scrapbooking wings on. Okay, so we've got a nested border strip here across the bottom. And the positioning of all this, it's just nice that you can adjust everything before you actually glue it in place. And I did really kind of move things around quite a bit till I was happy with what I was seeing. Now we've got a 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 photo mat. So this one rests just above the strip, and this one rests just below. So again, you can move these strips around to sort of get things where you want them to be with this particular layout. I have a nested journaling prompt that I will tuck behind here. I don't like to journal all that much, so I cover some of it. That's my trick. And then this, I'm going to tuck it behind so that it goes right, like the corner of this photo mat is right under the word yet. And then let's maybe take a wax seal. There's so many of them. Just be generous with it. And how about one more of these fleur-de-lis charms? And we could staple some velvet ribbon here. Let's take a look at the finished layout, and you can see how all that worked out. Now this again was glued into place and it's secure, but it took a little bit of time for all the glue to dry and for it to really adhere well, which is what I love about that bookbinding glue. Our final layout, this is so nice and easy. Just add this piece, grab that gorgeous velvet ribbon, and I'll cut it just a little longer than the page itself. Once it's adhered with the bookbinding glue out of the needle tip applicator, then I will just trim the ends accurately. And our last 3 little mats, guess what I used to align them? My grid ruler. I stapled some ribbon onto this and also added one of the cute little tassels. I can never remember the name of that thing. It's a tassel, Tricia. And here we have our finished page 1. Wow, that just, I don't know that it could have been much easier. Don't forget to print your instructions, and then you can consult them again as you're doing the assembly, and stick everything down. Don't be afraid of it. Go ahead and add your photos. If you like this kit, be sure to check out the card kit for Ivy League as well. We have some beautiful cards in the collection, and I can't wait to show you how to assemble them. Until next time, this is Tricia at Club Scrap.